What goes up must come down. Welcome to the Brand Breakdown. I'm Michelle.
And I'm Courtney.
And this is where we're going to track the rise and fall of big brands, from companies to celebs to pop culture phenoms and everything in between. Let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome back to what is turning out to be a beautiful Friday. I'm Michelle, and I have with me today our royal aficionado Courtney, who's going to give us the latest in royal news. Hey Courtney.
Hey. It's gross here, actually. I think it's going to thunderstorm soon.
Oh, I'm so sorry. It's so beautiful here.
Lucky. Yeah, so it's been a continuation of interesting weeks in the royal world. The biggest royal update, I think, of the week, I would have to say, is that the 85th anniversary of D-Day was on Thursday. And royals from around the world and heads of state from around the world were out in force in Normandy, and then also at a few other locations. And so we got to see Prince William out in kind of his global statesman role. He attended the ceremonies that were taking place in place of the king. The king attended a service of remembrance and gave a speech in both English and French. But William, because he is, in better health at the moment, he is the one who attended the really large gatherings. And he did a wonderful job. And I think it's interesting for me to see William out in those like kind of global statesman roles, because it's really where you can kind of see like the king in waiting come out. Just like when his father used to take on those roles for the late queen. It was just always kind of like I don't know, very like poignant appearances, to see William mixing with monarchs and heads of state and stuff.
I think he'll probably get there sooner than later based on uh, King Charles's age and now his somewhat precarious health, even though they say he's doing better. My guess is that Charles is not going to reign for 70 years. So I think we'll see William as king quicker than we did Charles for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Charles became the heir to the throne, the direct heir to the throne, when he was 4 years old. His mother, had assumed the throne when she was only, I think, 25. So he had a literal lifetime of waiting. Whereas, the king is already in his 70s and William is already in his 40s. So yeah, we definitely won't see, obviously, a 70-year reign. And I mean, realistically, even
A
a
20-year
20
reign.
year, yeah, like
Yeah.
even a 20-year reign would be really long. Although, if you look at the longevity that the royal family does have, the late queen was 96 when she passed. Her husband was 98 when he passed, I believe. So, like, it's not necessarily out of, what's the words I'm trying to find? It's not
Out
like
of the
a,
realm of possibilities.
yeah, that's, yeah. I was trying to think of a different word, but yeah, it's not out of the realm of possibility that he would live to be well into his 90s. But he does have cancer, although he appears to be recovering. But, that takes a toll on you. So I guess only
Well,
time will
and
tell.
so you don't think that he would abdicate? Um, you think he would die before he would give William the throne?
um, yeah, there are some other monarchies that have kind of taken up the practice of abdicating. Queen Beatrix did it in the Netherlands, and she abdicated in favor of her son. Um, but I don't see the British monarchs necessarily ever doing that. The Danish queen did it. Queen Margrethe did it in favor of her son. But yeah, I don't see, Queen Elizabeth had made her solemn vow when she was like 21 or something, prior to becoming queen, that she would, give her whole life, be it long or short, is the famous quote. And I think that that's really kind of instilled in the British royal family, that it is a job for life, not just for the average working age of a person. So I don't see, especially because Charles had to wait until, past retirement age to even start the job. So I don't see him ever abdicating in favor of William. And then I don't think I see William abdicating either. I think William also kind of understands, not necessarily understands, but is of the same opinion that like this is a lifelong role. You're born into it and you do it until the minute you die. So I don't see any of the British royals ever abdicating.
I don't know that you maybe, I don't know. Let's see. If William doesn't take the throne for 25 years, he's 40. Is that right? Is he
Hmm.
40?
Yeah.
So he'd be 65. I would be really old in 25 years. So I don't think I would live to see his son take the throne. So it'll be interesting to see how much the monarchy changes in the next 25 years, especially with the modernizing of the monarchy. It'll be really interesting to see. I wonder if there's any possibility that they would ever just get rid of the monarchy.
Um, so two things. One, the entire, I think we discussed this a couple weeks ago, but the thing with the British monarchy in particular, although you could say the same about the Danish monarchy, but it changes slowly. The Brits look at the monarchy as kind of their steadfast constant throughout various times of turmoil. They look to the royal family as the never changing constant. And for their part, the royal family knows that in order to maintain their relevance and popularity, although, their popularity waxes and wanes over time, they can't just change with the whims of what's going on. So they try to modernize to keep up with long-standing changes and like big cultural shifts that are necessary. But as we've seen with the Sussexes, they don't make quick pivots and quick changes on a whim. So although we know that William has plans for a more modern monarchy, and so does Charles. I think the changes that we're going to see are like kind of incremental, and they're kind of already been rolling out. William doing things on a different scale, doing things like larger initiatives like Earthshot and all of that, versus just cutting ribbons and shaking hands. But they're still doing that cutting ribbons and shaking hands part as well. So I think the changes are almost going to be like blink and you miss it type of changes, because they're not going to be any huge shifts in the way that we've seen other monarchies make big shifts. And also other monarchies have operated differently than the British royals anyway. So those shifts, like their operating procedures look a lot different than what we see in the UK, but they never really looked the same as what we've seen in the UK. So there's that. And then the second thing, what was the second thing that you said?
I don't remember, but can I? I mean, that was like 3 minutes ago.
I know.
Um, can I circle back though to something just, and
Yes.
maybe I'll remember what I said. When you're talking about shaking babies, no, that's not what you're doing. You're not shaking
No,
babies.
not
You're
shaking
shaking.
babies. William goes out there and he shakes a baby just for fun.
Shaking hands and cutting ribbons. Let's talk a little bit about Kate's recovery, because I just read an article 5 minutes ago that said that she had a very grueling cancer treatment, but that she seems to have turned the corner. But I also read an article yesterday that says the palace is not promising that she'll even come back before the end of the year. What do you know on that?
So I read that same article, or one that was similar. And I've seen a few articles over the last couple of weeks saying, she may never return in the same capacity that we've seen her. She may not be back till the end of the year. And then also the one that was saying she is turning a corner and she's now starting to get better. And also William, during one of his engagements yesterday, one of the D-Day veterans asked him how his wife was doing. And I think the direct phrasing of the question was, is she getting better? And William said, yeah, she is getting better. She is. So I doubt he would have been like, oh no, she's really, really having an awful time. but he didn't like necessarily sidestep the question. Um, and I think if Catherine was really, really ill, I think the crowd probably would have been told, like, do not ask questions about, you know what I mean? Like they
Yeah.
would have said, like, do not bring her up. So that didn't happen, obviously. So I think that with Kate, I mean, if she's going through a preventative chemotherapy, so she's going through rounds of chemo, we know that that probably takes 3 to 6 months generally. If she's doing any of the immunotherapy
Therapies.
type of stuff that is then meant
Mhm.
to try to ensure cancer doesn't come back, that's another few months. And that is the stuff that is like, it can be extra, extra hard on your system. So I wouldn't be surprised to hear that she had a really rough time of it. And I also wouldn't be surprised to hear that now she's starting to turn a corner because her treatment started, what, in March? And we are now into June. So that's 3 full months of treatment. So if she's maybe starting to come out the other side of her treatments, I think that, it wouldn't be surprising to hear she's starting to do better. Um, I've seen some crazy things on social media, though. People saying things like she's already dead. They're just trying to figure out how
Oh
to
yeah.
like make these
Yeah, I
announcements,
saw
or like
that.
she is dying and they're just like afraid to. I don't think any of that is true. Um,
I don't either. I think that's so weird. And then I saw the thing, there was a whole lot of speculation about an article that was posted that said she was only fraternizing with her birth family, quote unquote. And then people were like, that means that William's not there because he's not her birth family. What does that even mean? Like, and why would somebody irresponsibly say that? Like, her birth family could just be her family, you know?
Right. Yeah, I had seen a couple articles that were saying, like she had been like her birth family had been, really helping her out and all of that. Um I think it's just like another way for the gossip mongers to kind of get the clicks, because there's no doubt in my mind anyway that William has been with her. Like, we haven't had any reports that William hasn't been with her, that he's been staying elsewhere, that he's been seen, you know, in London as opposed to in Windsor overnight or for long stretches of time. Um and those are things that I think would definitely be reported. Like, there's definitely ways to know if, things were kind of on the outs. And then to say, like, oh, Kate's family has been spending a lot of time with her, as if that's a bad thing in some way. Like, she's always been very close to her mom and her siblings and her father. So it's not surprising if she's been leaning on them a lot during this time. And if they've been, if Carol and Mike have been stepping up to help with the kids and all of that. So I don't think any of it is really, I think it's just, clickbait, gossip mongering, because it's not weird to me that, like, oh yeah, Kate's been with her family. Yeah, of course she has. She's always with her family. Her mother has gone on engagements with them before so that she can watch the kids, like, while they're busy. Like, it's not weird that she's with her parents. And then, like you and I were discussing yesterday, her brother's got a book coming out in a couple months. I sincerely doubt that they would be going through with this publicity tour that he's on right now for the book and actually publishing the book if Kate was like deathly ill, you know? Um,
Right.
I don't think that the Middleton family would be willing to, have James out on a PR tour at the same time that Kate is like fighting for her life or something like that. Um, So I think it's all just people are, they keep saying, like, oh, the lost princess, and like, oh, the missing princess. And it's like, she's not missing. She's not lost. We know exactly where she is. We've known from the beginning where she is. We may not know every single like nitty gritty detail of it, but that stuff's none of our business necessarily. Like, we know she's
Right.
sick. We know she's getting treatment. We know she's not going to be working until the doctors say it's okay. That's it. That's all
Right.
we need to know.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I just think that, she probably doesn't look great. She probably doesn't feel great. She's probably very thin. These are all things that for herself and her own self image and all that, she wants to kind of make sure she feels great about herself before she goes back out in public. Believe
Right.
me, I totally get that.
Yeah. I've seen a couple people say things, on social media yesterday. I saw someone say, so many people when they have cancer, like they still have to go to work and they still have to like live their life. And it's like, okay, yes, fair. That is true. Especially here in the United States where we have the world's most broken healthcare system. People have to continue to go to work in order to afford their treatments. But so many other people take a medical leave from work and they don't do their jobs while they are receiving treatment so that they can focus on their health. And when people do that, you don't expect them to continue to show up at the office just to prove that they're still around, right? Or to like prove any sort of point to you because they've taken a medical leave from their job. And those people's jobs are also not to be one of the most photographed people in the world. So, like, very different. Like, Kate is probably doing the exact same thing that any person who undergoes cancer treatment does. She's not working. She's going to her appointments. She's recovering and resting at home. She might be feeling like crap some days. She's spending time with her family. And that is the same thing that, and we also know that she's been doing some work at home behind the scenes. She reviewed the report that came out about the early years thing. So we do know she's been doing some amount of work, maybe not forward facing work, but she's, checking emails and staying informed. So she's doing everything anybody else would do when we all have the luxury of not having a camera in our face when we do it. And for people to say, like, oh, no, no, she should have the camera in her face because that's like part of her job. And it's like, right, well, she's on leave from her job right now. So if you were on leave from your job, you wouldn't want your boss to come to your house and like sit in your kitchen and watch you feel like crap.
No.
So it's just so weird, the double standard that people apply to the royals and think that because they are royal and because they receive some taxpayer funding to do their job, that their entire life is owned and should be for public consumption. I just think that's such a gross way of looking at it.
Well, and I think that it's been another 3 months since she's been in public, really. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
so people are starting to get antsy again. So then they start making up conspiracy theories again just to keep the ball rolling. And I think that's what people do because people are not nice always.
Right.
So there's that. Speaking of people that are not nice always, so I saw a couple of articles on our friends stateside in California about American Riviera Orchard.
American Riviera Orchard, Arrow.
Uh, era, that's right. That it's not doing well and it's not even out of the gate yet, which honestly, between you and me, and we talked about this yesterday, I'm really starting to feel a lot of sympathy for Meghan that I feel like she just can't get a win.
Yeah, I think that, you know, I I don't know. Like, so she does this like soft launch of Arrow and she puts out the social media video and they launch the Instagram, and the only thing on the website is to sign up for the newsletter to, stay informed, and then nothing for a couple weeks. Then we get the slow drip of jam. We had 50 special
Ew.
I know, right? That was like a weird way to say that. um but she sent out the 50 jars of jam and they were numbered, so we know there was 50 of them theoretically, and we saw, I think, what, 4 of them pop up on social media.
And
And
they were like falling apart, a couple of them, which
yeah,
was
some of them
weird.
were falling apart, some of them the product just didn't necessarily look, not the product itself. I guess the jam looked fine, it's jam, but the packaging and all of that, the presentation of it all just looked a little bit like, oh, okay, so you sent some lemons that are turning brown to somebody, like, all right, whatever. Which,
Well,
that's
to be
probably not Megan's
fair,
fault.
yeah, to be fair, one of those people waited like a week before they posted it. So the lemons could have
Yeah.
easily been brown if they weren't in the refrigerator. Like, I
Yeah.
don't leave my lemons out. Do you leave your lemons out?
I mean, I do, but only because I buy them with the intention of using them in like a day or two.
Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, they would go in the fridge.
Anyway, so
Um,
I don't fault her for that.
yeah, yeah, no, that stuff, and she wasn't. I mean, I'm guessing she wasn't the one who was like picking the lemons that were going to be sent anyway. That was probably done by a PR person or whatever. But then we just never heard anything else about it. Like, we saw 4 things of jam and we never heard from it again. And then earlier this week, articles started popping up that American Riviera Orchard is over before it started. They haven't been able to find a CEO for the brand. Meghan was disheartened by the reception that she received with the jams and all of that. We do still know, they were filming the Netflix show. We had photos of the Netflix crew at the house in Montecito that they were renting in order to film. So we know that there's probably something else coming that may or may not be attached to American Riviera Orchard. But like you said, like, I'm just starting to feel bad. Like, through this whole thing of them quitting their jobs and leaving and doing all of this stuff where they had, the podcast and the Netflix show and the book, I've never been a fan of the way they've been going about it, because what they've seemed to do is take the approach of, in order to make ourselves look better, we're going to tear everybody else down. And that's just like a shitty way to be a human. But I've never been rooting against them. Like, I've always said from the beginning, I think Meghan should have gone the lifestyle route. If she wanted to do her own thing, cool. She should have come out with the TIG 2.0. She should have started a cookbook. She should have done a homewares line, like, right away. I think that would have been great. I think it would have been fine. It would have been more in line with what people were hoping for and expecting from her. And she instead waited like 4 years to do that. And now I think that they waited so long that the public perception of them is people either like flat out don't like them, or they just don't care. Like, they're not even curious anymore about what she's got going. And
Yeah,
like, I feel
because
bad.
everybody thinks everybody kind of treats her like she's a fraud, because she's not really a royal anymore and she's not really an actress anymore. So, and she's not really Martha Stewart. So, what is she? You know what I mean? Like, I don't think she knows. So, I think that's part of the problem too.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure. Like,
you know,
she's tried to be so many things and people are like, I don't get it. Like the Netflix show. Like, what is it? Is it a cooking show? Is it a talk show? Is it a like HGTV type of thing? Like, what are we getting? We don't even know what to expect. Um and if she's not sitting there trashing the royal family, does she have anything interesting to say? I mean, probably, because when she had the TIG, people were interested, but now I think people will be like, well, I don't really care about what you're doing in Montecito. I want to hear, you know, what it's like to be a princess. And she doesn't really have any information on that.
Yeah, and then, when she was doing the TIG, she was Rachel Zane, and people were very interested in Rachel Zane because she was a cool
Hmm.
character and she was an actress and she had a little bit of panache and she dressed well and she's pretty.
Hmm.
But, there are a million actresses who are talented, dress well, and are pretty that don't have lifestyle brands because I don't think anybody would buy them. You know what I mean? If Anne Hathaway started a lifestyle brand, I don't think anybody would be into that. I think they like watching her on the movies, but I
Right.
don't think they would buy her brand. Gwyneth Paltrow did it over a period of a decade, totally different.
Right.
And she was an Oscar winner and she comes from kind of Hollywood royalty too. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's totally, totally different. Have to wonder if Harry and Meghan are sitting back and thinking leaving the royal family was the biggest mistake we could have ever made. We should have figured out a way to, combat whatever was happening head on and, try to make amends and do things and have other people make amends within the stability and the security of the royal family because now they have none of that.
Right. Or, you know what? You said they should have found a way to combat it head on. And I feel like what they should have done is, I wonder if they're now sitting back going, maybe we shouldn't have been so combative. Like, maybe
Oh,
things
right.
weren't
Yeah.
actually as bad as we were feeling that they were at the time. And now looking back, we had it pretty good and we shouldn't have licked that gift horse in the mouth.
Well, and then, I think of everything that happened, the two things that really ruined them for the royal family. A, Spare. Spare
Hmm.
just
Yep.
frickin' set the whole place ablaze. And beyond Spare, if you go back even further, it would have been the Oprah interview.
Yep.
So I think that those two very public displays of enmity towards the royal family, I think really sealed sealed the deal for them. I mean, put a nail in the coffin, so to speak, for their relationships with the royal family, because it looks like every single time there's any kind of opportunity for Harry to go back and, mend fences with his family, it never happens. It just
Mm-hmm.
doesn't happen.
And I
So,
also think, in addition to Oprah and Spare, Finding Freedom and Endgame, knowing that they collaborated with Scobie, and then knowing that they were willing to lie about that in court, I feel like that just is like, okay, so not only did you feel like you had to get out there and get your side of the story told yourself, you are willing to sell your story to somebody else, and you are willing to lie about it. So they're not trustworthy. They've proven
yeah.
they're not discreet, they're not trustworthy. They're literally willing to lie in court about where they stand on certain things. Um yeah, they did nothing to make this an easy transition for themselves. It's like they felt like they had to fight for it, and I really don't think they had to fight for it. I think if they had said, "You know what? We want to step back. We want to, be part-time royals. We want to spend 6 months in the US, 6 months in the UK. When we're in the UK, we'll do some stuff, but we kind of want to do our own thing. Meghan wants to launch her blog and start a homewares line or whatever." I think they totally could have done that. But they wanted to do it the hard way. They wanted to
They
be
wanted to blow everything up. That's what they did.
yeah. Yeah, like they decided that rather than just play nice and get what they could, they wanted it they wanted all or nothing, and they were willing to fight for it. And it's like, you somehow thought you were going to win a fight against an institution that's been doing this for 1,000 years. Like,
Yeah.
okay, I guess. Good job.
It just doesn't make sense what they did. I mean, it truly doesn't. It's sad. It's sad. I do have a ton of sympathy now for them because we've been talking about them for almost a year,
Mhm.
and in that year they have not had one win. Not one.
I mean, I think to be fair, they've had some incremental wins, right? Like the Netflix docuseries did really well for a few weeks, and it was, it was a win for them, but also it was on the back of tearing other people down, which again, I don't think is a good look. Spare did really well, but again, on the back of tearing other people down. So, but I think that the bigger problem is that they've delivered a couple wins, but that isn't sustainable because they've already used that information, right? Like Harry can't write 3 versions of Spare. They can't do more docu-series where they continue to say the same things over and over again because people don't want to listen to it anymore. People are sick of it. So it's like they don't have any more material. And then, the Spotify deal fell apart. There was supposed to be, like, Meghan did her children's book, The Bench, that didn't really take off. Um, they announced that the podcast was going to be moving to a different platform. That hasn't done anything. Supposedly they have these 2 other Netflix shows. We'll see how those go. I mean, I'm curious,
Maybe.
but
Yeah, they
I don't
want
want to
to.
hear them complaining about the royal family anymore, and I don't think anybody does. So now they've got to rebrand themselves again as not royal and not whiners and see how that goes.
Yeah, it's sad. I'm sad for them. I'm going to have some sympathy for them this week until they, do something to be ugly again. I have all
Mhm.
my sympathy. Anything else in the news we want to talk about today?
I remembered what your question was before.
Oh, oh, I'm glad you're so much younger than I am, so you can access those pieces of your brain. You go,
um,
girl.
you had asked, do I think the monarchy will be abolished?
Oh, right. Yes.
And I don't think it will. I think people will want it to, just like people have always wanted it to be abolished. Um, it would be so incredibly difficult to separate the monarchy from the Constitution of the United Kingdom. There's like all the legalities there. And then you start dividing up the palaces and the artwork and the it's not just like, oh, and then this family now just goes and lives in a regular house and we take Buckingham Palace and everything in it and it belongs to the state and it turns into a museum. Like, that's not the situation. It would be so ridiculously complex to unentangle everything that I just don't see it happening. And then you take a look at the work that the monarchy does. What happens to all of that? Like who starts getting this like crazy publicity for all of these charity organizations? Who starts raising all of this like crazy amount of funding for these charity organizations? Who heads up these global initiatives like Earthshot and Early Years Foundation and all of that? Um, it would be, and then like, you know, the tourism dollars. Think, and also all of the people that are employed by the royal family. They employ hundreds and hundreds of people to manage all the households, manage all the estates, and not just like their private estates. Like I'm talking like all of the palaces that are open to the public. And then of course all of the people who work directly for them in their offices, and then all of the like maintenance people, and hundreds of people would lose their jobs. um and then the tourism dollars, part of what brings in so much money to not the UK. I'm sure people go to the UK for lots of reasons all the time, and it's a lovely place. But to be able to go to Windsor Castle and Buckingham Palace and walk through an actual palace that is actually being lived in and used because there's an actual working monarchy is like such a draw to the people who spend their hard-earned money to go on vacation and to fly to the UK, to stay at their hotels, to eat all of their food, to go on these tours that employ the groundskeepers and the housekeepers and the tour guides and the people who work in the gift shops and all of that. So it would just be really detrimental to way too many different facets of the economic setup of the UK and also the political setup of the UK that I just don't think it would ever happen.
That's an excellent explanation of why it won't happen, which, if it does, then you and I are out of a job.
Well,
So, you know,
we'll just talk about socialites instead of royals because it's not like, you know, the Greek royal family isn't a reigning royal family, but they're still all over the gossip pages and stuff like that. So,
well, I don't know anything about the Greek royal family.
oh, they're so fun. The crown princess, the king died a couple like last year, I think. Yeah, last year. And so his son, who would technically be the king if the monarchy was still existing, is he still just goes by Crown Prince Pavlos, and his wife Marie Chantal is American, the Crown Princess of Greece. So they're cool. Maybe we can talk about them one day. I like
Yeah,
them. A
that
lot of
sounds
people
good.
don't, but I like them.
Um, Alrighty then. Well, I don't have anything else if you don't.
I don't. I don't think
I
so.
hope I hope everybody has a super fantastic weekend. And we will probably be back in 2 weeks to give you an update. When there is a lot of royal news, we'll come weekly, and when there's not a lot of royal news, we'll be bi weekly. And other than that, hope you guys have a great week and take care.